The story of life on Earth is one of constant change, survival, and extinction. From the moment living creatures first appeared in the oceans billions of years ago, they have been locked in a struggle against time, environment, and fate. For every species that thrives and adapts, countless others vanish forever, leaving behind only bones, fossils, and mysteries for us to uncover. Extinction is not an unusual event. In fact, it is the ultimate fate of almost every species. More than 99% of all creatures that have ever lived on Earth are now gone. And yet, each story of extinction carries with it lessons, tragedies, and sometimes warnings about the future of life itself. To understand extinction is to understand not only the past, but also the possible destiny of our world. Imagine a planet that once belonged to the dinosaurs. For over 160 million years, these magnificent giants ruled the Earth. Some grew taller than buildings, while others were small and quick, darting through forests or swimming in rivers. They were not monsters but diverse creatures filling every ecological niche, from predators to plant-eaters. Their reign seemed eternal, but then something happened that changed everything. Around 66 million years ago, a giant asteroid, 6 miles wide, crashed into what is now the peninsula in Mexico. The explosion released energy billions of times greater than any bomb humans have ever created. Fires swept across continents, tsunamis swallowed coastlines, and dust blocked the sun for months, plunging the world into darkness. Plants withered, temperatures dropped, and ecosystems collapsed. In less than a geological moment, the mighty dinosaurs, who had seemed invincible, were gone. Only their relatives, the birds, survived. This event, called the Cretaceous Pelagian extinction, shows how sudden and catastrophic changes can erase even the most dominant species on Earth. But dinosaurs are not the only victims of time. Throughout history, other creatures have disappeared for reasons both natural and human-made. The woolly mammoth, a massive beast covered in shaggy fur, roamed the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Eurasia and North America. For tens of thousands of years, it survived harsh winters, feeding on grasses and coexisting with early humans. Cave paintings show our ancestors hunting them, relying on their meat, bones, and hides for survival. Yet as the Ice Age ended and climates warmed, grasslands shrank, forests expanded, and mammoth habitats vanished. At the same time, humans became more skilled hunters, chasing mammoths to the brink of extinction. The last isolated populations survived on remote islands for a few thousand more years, but eventually, they too disappeared. Their loss was not sudden like the dinosaurs but slow, a mixture of environmental change and human pressure. Their story reminds us that extinction can be a gradual process, stretching over millennia until the last individual takes its final breath. The dodo bird is another famous symbol of extinction, but its story is even more tragic because it happened in the age of exploration and was directly caused by humans. The dodo lived on the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. Far from predators, it evolved to be large, flightless, and unafraid of other animals, because it had no natural enemies. When sailors arrived in the 1500s, they found the dodo easy prey. The bird's meat was hunted for food, and its eggs were destroyed by rats, pigs, and monkeys brought by humans. Within just a century, the dodo was gone forever. Unlike the mammoth or the dinosaurs, the dodo's extinction was not caused by natural disasters but by human carelessness and exploitation. Today, the dodo is remembered as a warning of how quickly human activity can wipe out a species that has survived for millions of years in isolation. Another haunting tale is that of the passenger pigeon. Once, these birds filled the skies of North America in numbers that are almost impossible to imagine today. Flocks stretched for miles, so dense that they could block out the sun. Some estimates suggest there were billions of them, making the passenger pigeon the most numerous bird on the planet. Yet by the early 20th century they were completely extinct. What happened? Humans happened. With the expansion of the United States, forests were cut down for farms and towns, destroying the pigeons' nesting grounds. At the same time, hunters killed them by the millions for food and sport. No one believed a bird so numerous could ever vanish, but within a few decades, their numbers collapsed. The last known passenger pigeon, named Martha, died in captivity in 1914. Her death marked the end of a species that once seemed unshakable. The passenger pigeon's fate demonstrates how even the most abundant species can disappear if their environment is destroyed and hunting is unchecked. The Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine, is another heartbreaking example. This strange creature, native to Australia and Tasmania, looked like a mix between a wolf and a tiger, but it was actually a marsupial, carrying its young in a pouch like a kangaroo. The thylacine was the largest carnivorous marsupial of modern times, hunting small animals and birds. European settlers saw it as a threat to livestock and launched a relentless campaign to kill them. Farmers were paid bounties for every thylacine they destroyed. Combined with habitat loss and competition from dogs, the thylacine population dwindled. The last known thylacine died in a zoo in 1936, despite pleas to protect the species. Today, it exists only in old photographs and grainy film footage. Its extinction is a reminder of how fear and misunderstanding of wildlife can lead to irreversible consequences. These stories of the mammoth, the dodo, the passenger pigeon, and the thylacine are just a few chapters in a much larger book of extinction. Some disappearances were caused by sudden natural disasters, others were slow declines driven by climate change. But increasingly, it has been human beings who have accelerated the process, either through overhunting, destruction of habitats, introduction of invasive species, or pollution. Our species has reshaped the Earth more dramatically than almost any other force, altering landscapes, rivers, and even the atmosphere. As a result, countless animals have been pushed to the edge. It is important to remember that extinction is not always visible in the moment. When the last mammoth fell on a frozen island, there was no one to record it. When the last wild passenger pigeon died, it was just one bird among billions already gone. Yet the absence they leave behind changes ecosystems in ways that ripple across time. The loss of a species means the loss of unique DNA, behaviors, and interactions that can never be replicated. The world becomes a quieter, emptier place with each extinction. The great extinctions of the past also raise a haunting question. Are we living through another one? Scientists warn that we are in the middle of what some call the sixth mass extinction. Unlike the asteroid that doomed the dinosaurs, this extinction is being driven largely by humans. Forests are cut down at staggering rates, oceans are filling with plastic, and the climate is warming rapidly. Species that once seemed secure, like elephants, tigers, rhinos, and polar bears, are now endangered. Coral reefs, which are home to vast networks of marine life, are bleaching and dying as oceans heat up. Amphibians, one of the oldest groups of land animals, are vanishing faster than any other class of creatures, with diseases and habitat destruction wiping them out. If history has taught us anything, it is that extinction is permanent. Once a species is gone, it cannot return, no matter how much we regret its loss. Yet extinction is not only a story of loss, it is also a story of resilience and survival. After the dinosaurs vanished, mammals that were once small and timid rose to fill the empty spaces. From them eventually came primates, and from primates came humans. The cycle of extinction clears the stage for new life to evolve and flourish. But this does not excuse the reckless destruction caused by humanity. We have the power to choose whether species live or die, whether ecosystems collapse or recover. That is a responsibility unlike any faced by creatures before us. The lesson from the dodo, the passenger pigeon, and the thylacine is clear. Abundance does not guarantee survival, and neglect leads to tragedy. We must not assume that because there are millions of elephants or millions of fish in the sea, they will always be there. The past has shown us how quickly numbers can fall to zero. Protecting species is not only about saving animals but about preserving the balance of life that sustains us all. As we look back at the history of extinct animals, we are confronted with both awe and sorrow. Awe at the incredible diversity of creatures that once walked, flew, and swam across this planet. Sorrow at the fact that so many of them are gone, often because of our actions. But perhaps, by remembering their stories, we can change the course of our own. Extinction is inevitable in the long sweep of time, but the speed and scale of extinctions today are not. They are choices, and we can make different ones. By valuing the natural world, protecting habitats, and respecting the life around us, we can ensure that the animals of today do not become the ghosts of tomorrow. The march of extinction has never stopped, and as we dive deeper into the history of vanished animals, we begin to see that each disappearance tells us more about ourselves. For much of Earth's history, life has been shaped by forces beyond control, asteroids, volcanoes, and ice ages. But in recent centuries, human beings have emerged as the most powerful driver of extinction. This reality carries a weight that is both frightening and sobering, because it means that the survival of countless creatures is tied directly to our choices and actions. Yet to understand where we stand today, we must look at other stories of animals that vanished, sometimes suddenly and sometimes after a long struggle, and ask again the question, why did they vanish? One of the most chilling examples of human-driven extinction is the story of the great auk. This flightless seabird lived across the North Atlantic, from Canada to northern Europe. Standing nearly 3 feet tall, it resembled a penguin, though the two were not related. For centuries, the great auk was abundant. Indigenous peoples hunted it for food, but they did so in balance with nature. Everything changed when Europeans began to exploit the bird. Sailors slaughtered them in vast numbers for meat and oil, and their feathers were sold for bedding. Because the great auk could not fly and was awkward on land, it was an easy target. In the 1800s, when scientists realized the species was in danger, collectors made things worse by hunting them to obtain specimens for museums. The last confirmed great auks were killed in 1844 on a small island off Iceland. With their deaths, a species that had survived ice ages and shifting seas was gone forever. The great auk's story reminds us of how ignorance and greed, even when cloaked in the name of science, can destroy what cannot be replaced. Another victim of humanity's expansion was the Steller sea cow, an enormous marine mammal discovered in the 18th century. Related to manatees and dugongs, it grew up to 30 feet long and weighed more than 10 tons. It lived in the cold waters of the Bering Sea, feeding on kelp. When Russian explorers found it in 1741, they described the animal as gentle and slow, with no fear of humans. Unfortunately, this very gentleness made it easy prey. Within just 27 years of its discovery, the Steller sea cow was hunted to extinction for its meat, fat, and hide. By 1768, not a single one remained. This extinction happened so quickly that it shocked even the explorers of the time. To think that an animal so large and seemingly secure could vanish in less than 3 decades is almost unbelievable, and yet it happened. The Steller sea cow is a powerful example of how a species can be wiped out not by natural disaster, but by the speed and intensity of human exploitation. The Caribbean monk seal tells a similar tale. Once widespread throughout the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico, this seal was hunted relentlessly for its oil and meat. By the 20th century, only a few scattered colonies remained. Overfishing of the region's fish supply deprived the seals of food, and human settlement destroyed their habitats. In 2008, after decades without a confirmed sighting, the Caribbean monk seal was officially declared extinct. Its disappearance highlights how modern precious commercial hunting, industrial fishing, and human development can combine to eliminate even well-adapted marine animals. Today, its close relatives, the Hawaiian and Mediterranean monk seals, are critically endangered, reminding us that history could repeat itself again. But extinction is not only about large animals or birds. Sometimes the smallest creatures carry the greatest weight. The golden toad of Costa Rica, once abundant in a small cloud forest, vanished in the late 1980s. Scientists believe its extinction was caused by a combination of climate change, pollution, and a deadly fungal disease known as chytridiomyces. Unlike the slow disappearance of the mammoth or the hunting-driven loss of the passenger pigeon, the golden toad's extinction happened in the blink of an eye. Within a few years, a species that had thrived for centuries was gone. Its vanishing revealed the vulnerability of amphibians, which are now considered one of the most threatened groups of animals on Earth. Amphibians breathe through their skin and rely on delicate environmental balances, making them extremely sensitive to pollution and climate shifts. The story of the golden toad is a warning that even small changes in our atmosphere and ecosystems can cause sudden, irreversible losses. When we step back and consider these stories, we see patterns emerge. Extinctions often occur when 3 forces combine: environmental change, human exploitation, and invasive threats. Habitat loss is one of the most devastating factors. As humans build cities, cut forests, drain wetlands, and convert wild spaces into farmland, countless species lose their homes. Without shelter, food, and safe breeding grounds, their populations collapse. Overhunting and overfishing accelerate this decline. Many animals once considered abundant, from whales to bison, were hunted to near extinction before conservation laws were put in place. Invasive species, introduced either deliberately or accidentally, add another layer of destruction. Rats, cats, and snakes introduced to islands have wiped out native birds and reptiles that never evolved defenses against such predators. Diseases carried by introduced species have devastated amphibians and other vulnerable groups. Together, these pressures form a storm that many species cannot survive. Consider the story of the Pyrenea ibex, a wild goat native to the mountains of Spain and France. For centuries it was hunted, and its numbers declined steadily. By the late 20th century, only a few remained. In 2000, the last known Pyrenea ibex was found dead under a tree, crushed by a falling branch. With that, the species was declared extinct. However, in 2003, scientists attempted something unprecedented. They cloned the ibex using DNA from preserved skin samples. A surrogate mother goat gave birth to the clone, briefly bringing the species back to life. But the young ibex died within minutes due to lung defects. It was the first time a species had been extincted, though only for a short while. This experiment raised profound questions. Should humans attempt to bring back extinct animals? Could science undo the mistakes of history? Or is extinction, once it happens, meant to be permanent? While extinction remains controversial, the case of the Pyrenea ibex reminds us that the line between life and death for a species is razor. Another haunting example is the beiji, or Chinese river dolphin. For thousands of years, this graceful freshwater dolphin lived in the Yangtze River, revered by local cultures as a symbol of beauty and luck. But with the rapid industrialization of China, the beiji faced pollution, overfishing, and constant boat traffic. By the late 20th century, its population had plummeted. Despite conservation efforts, surveys in the early 2000s failed to find a single beiji. In 2006, it was declared functionally extinct, meaning there were not enough individuals left to ensure survival. The loss of the beiji was particularly tragic because it represented not only the death of a species but the destruction of an entire river ecosystem. Scientists called it the first large aquatic mammal to go extinct due to human activity. The Yangtze River, once alive with dolphins, now carries the ghost of their absence. As we reflect on these losses, it becomes clear that extinction is not evenly distributed across the globe. Islands, in particular, are extinction hotspots. Because island species evolve in isolation, they often lack defenses against predators and diseases. When humans arrive, bringing new animals and hunting for food, the results are devastating. The moa, giant, flightless birds of New Zealand, were hunted to extinction by the Mbori people within just a few centuries of their arrival. Some moa stood over 12 feet tall, towering over humans, yet they had no fear of people. Once they were gone, their primary predator, the host's eagle, also disappeared, unable to survive without its main source of food. This cascade of extinction shows how the loss of one species can trigger the downfall of another, reshaping entire ecosystems. The same patterns have been repeated on islands across the world, from the extinction of giant tortoises on the Mascarenes to the loss of countless small birds in Hawaii. These stories are not just sad tales of the past, they are mirrors of what is happening today. Every extinction that has already happened offers a warning of what could happen again. The great auk foreshadows the fate of penguins if ice continues to melt and fishing continues unchecked. The badgie warns of what could happen to other river dolphins around the world, including the endangered Amazon river dolphin. The golden toad's sudden disappearance is a sign of how climate change and disease may wipe out entire classes of animals before we even fully understand them. The lesson is always the same: extinction is permanent, and it happens faster than we expect. Yet within these tragedies there is also hope. Awareness of extinction has grown, and humans have shown they can act differently. In the 20th century, the American bison was brought back from the brink of extinction through conservation efforts. Whales, once hunted nearly to disappearance, are slowly recovering under international protection. The bald eagle, symbol of the United States, was nearly wiped out by hunting and pesticide use, but now soars again across North America. These successes prove that extinction is not inevitable when humans decide to protect rather than exploit. If we can learn from the mistakes of the past, perhaps we can prevent the next dodo, the next passenger pigeon, or the next badgie. Extinction teaches us about fragility, but it also teaches us about responsibility. The world is not ours alone. Each species is part of a web that supports all life, including our own. When one thread is cut, the entire web weakens. The stories of lost animals are not just stories of them, they are stories of us, of our relationship with the natural world, and of the choices we make. We cannot bring back the great auk or the Steller sea cow, but we can decide whether elephants, rhinos, gorillas, or countless other endangered species will meet the same fate. Every extinction carries a question: what will humanity do differently next time? And so, as we listen to the echoes of vanished animals, we must remember that extinction is not just about the past. It is unfolding in the present, and it will shape the future. The animals that are alive today are part of a fragile balance that depends on our respect and protection. If we continue down the path of destruction, the 21st century could be remembered as the age of loss. But if we choose wisely, it could be remembered as the age when humans finally understood that to save animals is to save ourselves. The history of extinction is not finished, because it is still being written every day. What makes the subject both powerful and painful is that while the past cannot be changed, the present and future are still within our grasp. The stories of lost species echo like warnings through time, each one telling us not only how fragile life is but also how connected we are to every living thing. Extinction is final, irreversible, and absolute. Yet in every extinction story, there is also a choice whether to repeat those mistakes or to forge a different path. As we explore more examples of vanished animals, we uncover not only the reasons for their disappearance, but also the lessons that can guide us toward a more sustainable future. Think of the quagga, a strange and beautiful subspecies of the plains zebra. It lived in South Africa, with a unique appearance. The front half of its body was striped like a zebra, while the back half was brown and plain, almost like a horse. The quagga was heavily hunted in the 19th century for meat, hides, and because farmers viewed it as competition with livestock. By the late 1800s, the quagga was gone from the wild, and the last captive one died in 1883 in a zoo in Amsterdam. For decades, the quagga was remembered only in paintings and stuffed specimens. But in the late 20th century, scientists launched the Quagga Project, an attempt to selectively breed zebras that resembled the quagga using genetic relatives. While this effort does not truly bring back the quagga, it shows humanity's growing awareness that extinction caused by humans carries a moral responsibility. The story of the quagga demonstrates how quickly beauty can be lost, but also how memory can inspire action. Another haunting case is the Pinta Island tortoise, a species of giant tortoise native to the islands. These tortoises were once abundant, but they were hunted by sailors for food, and their habitats were destroyed by introduced goats. By the 20th century, only one individual was known to remain, a male named Lonesome George. He became a symbol of conservation, a living reminder of what had been lost. For decades, scientists tried to breed him with related tortoises, but he never produced offspring. In 2012, Lonesome George died, and with him, his species vanished forever. His preserved body is now displayed as a memorial to the fragility of life. The story of Lonesome George resonates deeply because it personalizes extinction. Instead of thinking about billions of creatures disappearing in silence, people saw the face of a single animal carrying the weight of an entire species. His death was mourned around the world, not only by scientists but by ordinary people who recognize the tragedy of losing something unique forever. The West African black rhinoceros is another example of extinction in modern times. Rhinos once roamed across much of Africa, but relentless hunting for their horns pushed many species to the edge. The horns, valued for ornaments and traditional medicines, created an illegal trade that devastated populations. Despite conservation efforts, the West African black rhino was officially declared extinct in 2011 after years without confirmed sightings. Its loss highlights the destructive power of poaching and the global black market in wildlife products. Today, other rhinos such as the Javan and Sumatran rhinos are critically endangered. The fate of the West African black rhino hangs over them like a shadow, reminding us that without protection, they too may be lost forever. The heath hen, a type of grouse native to the eastern United States, was once so common that people believed it would never disappear. But by the 19th century, hunting and habitat loss drove its numbers down. Despite efforts to protect it on Martha's Vineyard, a small island off Massachusetts, the population dwindled until only one male, nicknamed Booming Ben, remained. For years he called for mates that never came. When he died in 1932, the heath hen was gone. His lonely fate echoes the story of Lonesome George and reminds us that extinction is not always about dramatic numbers, but sometimes about the silence of one creature being the last of its kind. As we consider these tragedies, the question grows heavier. Are we living in an age of extinction unlike any before? Scientists increasingly warn that the current rate of species loss is comparable to the great mass extinctions of Earth's past. But this one is different because it is not caused by asteroids or volcanic eruptions. It is caused by us. Deforestation, overfishing, climate change, pollution, and the spread of invasive species are driving animals and plants to extinction at a rate estimated to be hundreds of times higher than natural background levels. This is why many biologists call it the sixth mass extinction. And unlike the extinctions of the past, this one is unfolding in front of us, in real time. But extinction is not only about the animals that have already vanished, it is also about the ones standing at the edge of the cliff today. Consider the orangutans of Borneo and Sumatra. These great apes, our close relatives, are losing their forests to palm oil plantations. Their populations have dropped dramatically, and they are now critically endangered. The same is true for tigers, whose habitats are shrinking due to deforestation and human encroachment. Polar bears, symbols of the Arctic, are struggling as sea ice melts from climate change. Amphibians, already vulnerable, face waves of deadly fungal diseases. In each of these cases, we can already see the outlines of a future extinction unless urgent action is taken. The stories of the dodo, the passenger pigeon, and the great auk show us how quickly abundance can vanish. Today's endangered species could be tomorrow's extinct species unless we learn from history. There is also the question of ecosystems. Extinction is not only about losing one species, but about unraveling the balance of nature. When wolves were exterminated from Yellowstone National Park in the early 20th century, deer populations exploded, leading to overgrazing and the collapse of vegetation. When wolves were reintroduced decades later, the ecosystem began to recover, showing how crucial predators are to maintaining balance. Similarly, the extinction of pollinators such as bees or butterflies would have catastrophic consequences for agriculture and wild plants. Every extinction has ripple effects, many of which we cannot predict until it is too late. This is why protecting species is not only about saving individual animals, but about preserving the fabric of life itself. Yet despite the grim reality, there is still hope. The same species that humans push toward extinction can sometimes be saved if action is taken in time. The American alligator, once nearly wiped out by hunting, has recovered through legal protections. The California condor, reduced to only a handful of birds in the 1980s, has been brought back through intensive breeding programs. The giant panda, long a symbol of conservation, has seen its status improved from endangered to vulnerable due to habitat protection and global awareness. These stories show that while extinction is permanent, endangerment is not. When humans care enough, when laws are enforced, and when communities are involved, recovery is possible. The stories of extinction also force us to confront deeper questions about our place in the natural world. Are we stewards, protectors, or destroyers? The truth is, we are all three. Humanity has the power to destroy species through greed and neglect, but also the power to protect and restore through compassion and science. Technology, often a driver of destruction, can also be a tool for conservation. Satellites monitor deforestation, drones track endangered animals, and genetic research opens possibilities for preserving diversity. Yet technology alone cannot solve the problem. What is needed most is a change in values. A recognition that the survival of animals is not separate from our own survival but deeply connected to it. Every extinct animal leaves behind a legacy, a lesson carved into the memory of the earth. The dinosaurs remind us that life can be swept away in an instant by forces beyond control. The mammoth and the dodo remind us that climate and human exploitation can slowly erase even the most familiar creatures. The badgie and the golden toad remind us that modern pressures pollution, disease, and climate change are accelerating the pace of loss. The stories of Lonesome George and Booming Ben remind us of the loneliness of being the last. Together, these stories form a tapestry of caution, tragedy, and wisdom. As we reach the end of this journey through extinction, one truth becomes clear: extinction is forever. It is the closing of a book that will never be written again. Yet while we cannot change the past, we can still influence the future. The animals alive today depend on the choices we make now. Will we allow elephants to follow the mammoths into silence? Will we let the rhinos vanish like their lost cousin in West Africa, or will we take their stories to heart and fight to preserve them? The answer lies not in the distant future, but in the decisions being made today in forests, in oceans, in cities, and in every corner of the earth. The story of extinct animals is, in the end, the story of us. It is a mirror reflecting our power, our carelessness, and our potential for change. We cannot undo the past, but we can honor it by ensuring that future generations inherit a world still alive with wonder, diversity, and beauty. Extinction explains the fragility of life, but it also calls us to action, to ensure that the question, "Why did they vanish?" is not asked again and again in sorrow, but replaced with a new question: "How did we save them?"